Hey folks, welcome back to Mark Kelly Farm. We're out here in the shop today. As you can see, we've got a project that I picked up at Jaunt that I want to get going, our sandblasting cabinet. So we're going to give that thing a good look over today, see what we can do to improve it, and see if we can get it working. So stick around. So here's the blast cabinet that we picked up at Jaunt. We got another glass piece with it, but as you can see, it is broken. So this can go straight in the bin. We also figured out that our gloves that are built in here have holes in them. So I picked up a new set of gloves. So I think the first thing we can do is get those installed. Got our cabinet open here. We've got to remove these 4 screws holding this collar on. Just going to use the nut driver because I don't like using the flatheads. So there's what our gloves look like with the rings off. Looks like they just fold over on here. And you just run the screws through them. Let's pull these old roached gloves out of here. They've got holes in them. Got one of my new gloves poked in here. You want to make sure you've got the right hand glove in the right hand side. And the top of the glove has this seam on here. I think we'll get the collar, run the screw through, and then we'll overlap this where it needs to be. And then we can just kind of pull this around as we go. We'll do the bottom screw last and get it fit on there. Okay, we're installed. I found it the easiest just to put the collar inside the glove as far as that first seam right here, and then just put it on that way. If we find that we're blowing any air or sand around out to the outside, we can always add 4 more screws to seal it up a little bit better. So we'll do the same thing on this side now. Okay, our new gloves are mounted. Now the previous owner said he used to tape like saran wrap over the window to help preserve the window lens so you don't have to change it as often, because as you're sandblasting in here, it'll kind of blast the window where you won't be able to see through it as well. We're going to go ahead and remove that. We may replace that with our own layer there, or we just may buy a new window when we need it. All right, we've got that off of there. There was several layers of dried up tape that were almost impossible to get off, but we used a razor blade, got it off of there. We've got a real good tight seal all the way around the top door here, so we don't have to worry about that. We have this area where a light bulb goes in here. The bulb is missing, and this has been broken loose. Looks like it used to be tack welded down, and then this thing's a little loose. So we'll get a bulb in there, get it plugged in. We'll see if that fixture even works. Make sure there's no dirt in there. Okay, I put like a 100-watt LED bulb in there. We plugged it in. Let's flick the switch. Oh, beautiful. So the outlet does work. However, I noticed this wire here is a little frayed. So we're going to take this apart and cut this wire back so we don't have this frayed area here that's a little dangerous. All right, we made sure the power is off. Now we can take that plug apart. So pulling this thing apart, our green ground wire from our cord coming from the plug was not even grounded. If you've never done one of these switches, you don't have to run all 3 wires through the switch. Usually there's a ground lug on a switch, though this one does not have one. Your white common wire from your plug just goes on through to your light. Your black wire, which is your hot wire from your plug, goes to one side of the switch there, and then it continues on and goes in. Now, I don't know why they used the green wire here. Should have used the black, but it's not going to hurt as long as I know it. So the only wire you're truly switching is the hot wire, just turning the hot on and off. That's the only wire you're using. Now this hot wire going into the cabinet to the light, we don't need this little piece of wire here. We're going to eliminate it to eliminate a connection, and we'll put a terminal on this wire just to go straight to the plug. Now when you're rewiring your switch, it doesn't really matter which wire goes to which pole, because this just creates an open and closed connection in here. Right now it's open because it's off, and then when you close the connection, that connects these two poles here and sends juice through the switch. So either wire will work. So because this is stranded wire we're working with, we use some terminals here. If it was solid core wire, we could just wrap around that screw and tighten those screws. Or there's a hole here. If you strip your wire, this is the strip gauge right here. Strip your wire that long and shove it, your solid core wire, into that hole. It'll grab onto it automatically. And then if you need to pull the wire out, you stick a little screwdriver in that slot, and it allows you to pull the wire back out of there. So we're going to actually attach our ground wire. So we'll probably just get a tapping screw, go down into the metal, and we'll attach this wire. We've got our white wire just going from our cord right on through into the outlet. It can just go straight in. So we'll get this tidied up and put it all back together. Okay, we got it all wired back in. We got it plugged back in. There wasn't any lightning going on, so let's give it a try. She works. All right. Next thing we need to look at here is the blower fan. What this blower fan did is it evacuated dust out of the chamber, because when you're sandblasting in there, you get a lot of dust. The sand or media in there is heavy enough to go back through into the bottom. However, the dust will blow around in there, and this would evacuate that. But I was told by the guy I bought this from that this blower motor gave out, no longer works. So he was just hooking his shop vac up to this to pull this the dust out of the cabinet. So we'll probably go with that right now. I'm going to take all this off and clean this up a little bit. But later on, we'll probably get an adapter that will fit our shop vac to where we can just plug it in instead of having to use a bunch of tape. I don't want to use a blower motor, because if you're using the blower, you'll have to vent that outside some way, because you don't want the dust just blowing around in your shop. So a shop vac is actually a better option anyway. Okay, we got all the nasty tape cut off of that. Now our pigtail from our blower, I'm assuming that this used to run in there and get power off of this switch as well. So when you turn the cabinet on, the light and the blower came on at the same time. So we're not going to need this blower anymore since it doesn't work. And so the pigtail is not dangling around in the way. We're just going to cut that off. So our light guard was just barely hanging on there, so I just pulled it off. So I've bent it straight again. We're going to mount this back on here. So all we got to do is get our MIG welder over here, put some spot welds back on that, and then that will be fixed. Well, that's going nowhere now with the loss of a little bit of paint on the back side, but next time we have some red paint out, we'll just give that a little scuff and throw some paint on it. So next thing I want to do is play around with this gun. This is a siphon seed blast gun, which means your air hose, which connects out here, we'll have to put a fitting on here to connect the air hose to. This connects to the inside of this air hose, and then there's a tube that goes down into the bottom of this hopper. And as the air blows through this gun, it siphons sand up through here, or whatever medium you're using, and then blows out together with the air and the sand. So we'll have to figure out a hose from here to here, get that done. We may come up with a different configuration later. A lot of times people will put a hose down on the bottom of the hopper down here, which that's the drain right now, but we can put a hose there and come through also the same place as this hose, connect them both to the gun. That way it just feeds a lot better. So let's break this open and see how we can get all of this connected. So this gun comes with a barbed end here for the air hose, which you could just slip a hose on there and put a hose clamp. However, the hose we already have has a quick connector. So I'm going to see if I have the male portion that goes into here that will screw into that gun. Okay, we got this piece out, and I did have a couple of these in my stash. So we'll get that screwed in there. It appears to be the same size thread. Okay, got our connection made. I need to find a, let's see, a male to go here. So that'll be the other one in that package. There we go. Got our air hose connected. Don't hear any leaks. Sweet. So now we need a feeder hose for our stand. This appears just to be like 5/8 garden hose type hose. Same down here. So we just need to find a very flexible piece of hose to attach to there and there. And we'll get some hose clamps. Gonna have to find one that's pretty flexible, because in the wintertime that'll be pretty hard to move around. Well, we got a piece of hose. It's just a piece of garden hose, super stiff. It'll work for now, but we're gonna have to find a lot more flexible hose for that. A little better rubber, I think, similar to like an air hose type. So we're at a point where we can give this thing a test drive. We just got to get our shop vac hooked up to this thing. Okay, we got our vacuum hooked up. What I'm going to do for our test drive is this little International Harvester combo wrench that we picked up, I believe at the last auction or the one before. Be a perfect little starter project for this, so let's give it a shot. When you turn on the vacuum, it sucks those gloves in. Well, there's our first piece sandblasted. Pretty successful, I do say so myself. You can see how crude the castings were back in the day. So we'll dress this thing up before we put a coat of paint on it. But that's what we got the blast cabinet for, is stuff like this. It's going to make it a whole lot easier. And you probably saw in the video that it got really dusty in here. And that's because this media is probably wore out, so it's more dust than it is sand or aggregate in there. So that needs to be replaced probably. The other thing I found, you saw when those gloves in there just completely inflated, well, it's got a vent here that's supposed to allow air in so it doesn't create such a vacuum, but this had a filter in it and it was just absolutely plugged. So I pulled that filter out. And then once I got that taken care of and air was able to go in, it circulated a lot better and those gloves didn't like completely inflate in there. Now the other thing that wasn't quite working out was that hose, that piece of garden hose that we've got. It's just so stiff. I was fighting that thing the whole time. I found it easier to take the work to the nozzle instead of the nozzle to the work. So we're definitely going to have to get a more flexible hose for that. And then I was constantly finding that I had to take the probe and probe it in all around, where once we get this probe put down here and run the hose through the side of the cabinet, both hoses will be together. They'll act together and I won't have to keep moving that probe because it'll pull from the bottom of the cabinet. Now another thing that I need to do, this cabinet is very heavy because of all that medium in there. So I don't have a place where I can just park this thing and leave it right now. So it needs to be mobile. So we're going to create a cart that this sits on with some caster wheels. I've already got the wheels, already got the steel, just got to do it. And then that's also going to help with the height of this thing, because right now I got to kind of bend down to get in here. And once those wheels are in there, I'll be a lot more comfortable as tall as I am getting in there and working. But we'll do that in another video. I don't want to bore you with all that trivial stuff. Another thing I want to do is this stand down here is a little wobbly because it's all bolted together. I will probably get the welder and weld that solid so it doesn't seem as rickety. So future improvements on our blast cabinet, but I'm real happy that I got this thing, and for 50 bucks, you just can't beat that price. All the bones are here. So hope you enjoyed our little upgrade project here, and I hope you come back and see us here at Mark Kelly Farm. We've got lots of stuff to do here in the shop. We've got enough projects to last us all winter for sure. So till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Love you guys. See you soon.